you know what I mean. So there's flexibility for that change. So, but just by the name, it's pretty, I think, clear. Agile is like, you know, you develop it along the way. Waterfall is that water falls on that, you know, specific location, and then it, you know, obviously it builds up. So yeah, so those are the methodologies, and then there could be a hybrid, like depending on how they're structured. And what happens is you've got, with the car manufacturing industry, what happens is usually they run a separate project. So like say, whilst they're talking about going to Bangladesh, there could be there's a separate project they could be running, which is a development of a prototype for a new car, right? So that could be a separate project. And what ends up happening is once that prototype is developed within a year or two or whatever time it takes, then that project is finished because they've developed the prototype. It's a working prototype, and then it starts manufacturing, if you know what I mean. And then your project stops and then starts manufacturing. But obviously, building a new factory for that is another project also, if you know what I mean. So you can see the importance of project management in any industry, in any sphere of whether it's private or government, or whether it's manufacturing, or whether it's the not-for-profit sector.
Thank you very much. You have rightly pointed out 3 methodologies specifically. Number 1, waterfall methodology. The name itself is very strict. Water will fall in a specific location, whether you will do it or not. So it required stringent approval of proper authority before starting any initiative. Later on, you have also defined about agile as well as hybrid methodology of project implementation. In this stage, may I ask you, what are the monitoring and evaluation mechanism for proper implementation of a development project?
Monitoring, usually there's what we call a project implementation review. We call it in which we could do it halfway in the project, or we could do it you know, through the project. Through the actual duration of at the end of the project. The other thing we have is the project governance structure. So to monitor the project, you have, before you start the project, once you get the planning approval, we set up a project governance structure, which is already a structure that will monitor the project, that will make decisions on how, if there's any change in variations of time and cost and quality. And I think those are the 2 main ones. Those are the governance structure and the implementation review. And the other one is you've got like a gateway system. So each project goes through a gate, we call it. So the initiation phase will go through a gate. Once the planning is finished, it'll go through a gateway system, which will mean it's like a checklist that it has to meet. The project has to meet the land acquisition requirement. The project has to meet the environmental approvals. So there's actually a gate system. So there's a formal gateway system in Australia for in large organizations. In Nepal, I'm not aware of such systems, formal systems in place. There are ad hoc systems where the government will say you have to have land acquisition, you have to have approvals in place, but it's not formalized in the actual project management, day-to-day project management, if you know what I mean.
Thank you very much. You have rightly said that project could be monitored periodically, or could be monitored halfway or end of the project. So in different stages, project could be monitored. Not only in different stages, you have also mentioned that project could be governed as per the governance structure of the project. For example, if I have five component in a project, uh, component one will be finished first, then component two or three could be started parallelly. Then component four and five will be started. So in a sequence, project could be monitored whether component one has finished or whether I should start two and three parallelly or one by one. So project monitoring is a very important task for due time implementation of a project. You have also mentioned that a matrix, for example, four metrics or eight metrics could be used for project monitoring and evaluation properly. So in this stage, I would like to know how a development project or proper project implementation could benefit the trade and investment of a country.
I think we touched upon this before, but I with the time constraints, I think I'll just really in short, I'll make it very short. One is if the country has good project management systems, the foreign investors are attracted to the country. If the projects such as we mentioned before, the car manufacturing, if the government understands the project structure and what the project needs for like a car manufacturing facility to be in Bangladesh, straight away the investors are attracted, if you know what I mean. And the government will also be proactive in getting the approvals for them, helping the private sector in the planning or the investor in the planning phase. And you can see that project, instead of becoming very difficult, is now doable. And once the project is easy to undertake, the private sector investors are happy, because a lot of the times I see that in Nepal. I really don't know much about Bangladesh, but in Nepal, government will say, come and invest, but the government is not helping it, the private sector. You know what I mean? So they're not really preparing the ground for the projects. They're not really leveling the football field. You can't build a airport in a hill, for example, right? Imagine if the government leveled the hill, did all the planning approvals, then it's easy. Then the private sector can come from any country. They've got the land, they've got a flat land. They can do all the detailed work for the airport. They can do all the other technical work. So you can see it's a lot of it looks common sense to me, because I'm a project management professional. And in Australia, the developed countries are developed because of that, because they already have everything ready. So if you want to build a solar farm, it's already ready. Like the government will make it ready. It's already a flat land. The government will give you the next connection at the feasible location where there's connection, right? The government will actually make that connection for you, and then you've got to connect into that transmission system. But the government do all this legwork, not the private sector. Like they're not in. So the government does do a lot of preparation work, a lot of planning work on the ground to make the projects feasible. And that's because the government here is very strong on project management. In fact, the government is the largest employer of project managers in Australia, in the US, in any developed country, it's like that. So you can see the benefit is huge.
Sir, as far as my knowledge, you have grown and brought up in Nepal. Later on, you went to Australia for higher study, as well as you became a good project manager. So how a good project manager could be created in the developing country like Bangladesh or Nepal?
I think we have to have a traineeship program for young professionals that want to join project management. And the first thing is the government has realized that project management is a separate discipline. Because every time I go to Nepal, they think project management is the same as construction management. There are some overlaps, but it's not. It's a totally different